Managers of Reddit. What's the worst thing an employee has done to get themselves fired? This one bartender called in to see if her bartender buddy at night wanted to swap in cut times. She was asking him to close for her so she could leave early as she was sick. We expected a slow night, so he told her to just stay home. All good. He's got it covered. We then watched her go into the bar across the parking lot in her work shirt. One of our crew was off shift but hanging out. He ran over to see what was up. Chica acted like nothing was wrong, ordered him a shot and did one with him. This was not her first offense. She was 23. Nobody likes you when you're 23. Probably the dumbest was a relatively low-level employee yelling at a colleague at their cubicle. It was over some data for a project. The person they were yelling at is one of the smartest, kindest, easiest to work with people I've ever worked with, who I have repeatedly recommended for promotion to their manager. Guy was walked out that afternoon. It was a $90,000 a year job, and someone fairly fresh out of school right into the toilet, and 20 people, some of whom he will likely encounter in his career, that will forever remember him for that. Had a guy working for me who was a recovering alcoholic. One of the other employees went to Cuba and brought him back a Mickey of Cuban rum without knowing how bad it was. The guy drank it all in the bathroom before collapsing and nearly pulling down all of the fixtures. I made sure he got home and gave him an ultimatum: resign and use us as a reference or get fired with cause. He chose the former. The guy lived under a bridge for a while before settling in with his father in another province. I'm still his reference for employment. AFD, she was a nurse for what it's worth. So she didn't just leave a store or something. She left her patients unattended, and her CNA left with her to go fuck her CNA at a dog park across the street. Came back and finished her night shift. Posted "I love fucking" on Facebook at 3 a.m. during said shift, which her husband, not the CNA, saw, which led to him showing up at the facility threatening staff members. Last I heard about her, she lost her license due to trafficking fentanyl. I had a co-worker get fired for applying for jobs on a jobs site using her company computer at work, after she'd been warned about appropriate internet use and that she was being monitored. Had a different co-worker fired for looking at porn at work on a work computer, also after being warned about appropriate internet use. I had an employee who was the absolute rudest and most incompetent asshole. He made it easy by just calling in sick for 2 weeks straight and refusing to provide a doctor note. Got mildly injured by the garage door in the warehouse after fucking around. Agreed to go to the hospital after his supervisor very clearly told him there would be a drug test and he didn't have to go to the hospital, and that he would be fired if he tested positive on the drug test. Remember, this was a mild injury, like a small scrape. Saying this as a co-worker who saw it, not a boss trying to downplay. Guess who got fired? Former assistant used his mum as a reference, different last name ... I should have caught it when she said she felt like she'd known him from birth. Had none of the skills he promised. Final straw, and he ordered himself a $75 gaming mouse for the computer and a birthday cake-scented candle. After being fired, he left me a Yelp review telling people I was the meanest, craziest boss ever. Bless his heart. In college I worked at a tie shop. It was actually a really fun job. But one of my co-workers would take some ties as he was unloading the shipment truck, hide them behind the retaining wall outside, then come back at night and put them in his truck and take off. I'm still not even sure how he got caught, but they fired him for it, which is too bad because I actually really liked that guy. I had an employee pull out a bag of meth and ask another employee if he wanted to smoke some of it. Another employee was supposed to go canvassing in a company car. Phone calls. The police called from a county 3 hours away to inform me that the employee had crashed the car because he was high on heroin, and I needed to make arrangements to pick up the totaled car. First job in insurance. Weird guy wanted to be in the team that investigates fraud, part of the claims department. They were a kind of clandestine CIA operation who were listening in on our phone calls, and you could get tapped to join if you were smart enough and hardworking enough. He was fired for sleeping at his desk repeatedly. I don't think anyone honestly tries to get fired unless they want to collect unemployment, but by doing that you can't really do anything extreme. But I will say the most stupidest shit I ever seen someone do that got them fired was freebasing in the bathroom. Mind you, this bathroom wasn't a solo bathroom, so another employee walked in as it was happening. I worked at a food distribution center in the UK years ago. You could get into trouble for leaving the warehouse floor without authorization, and this guy wanted to use the loo, but didn't want to get into trouble. So he done a poo in one of the 1,100 Elta wheelie bins that are scattered around the warehouse. He was fired. I think I laughed for 2 days. Early 20s kid disappeared for a week on a heroin binge. His friends dropped him off in the middle of the day the next week, walking into the office high off his balls as if nothing happened. The next day his dad came to apologize, explain what happened, let us know that he was going back to rehab, and ask if he could continue working afterwards. Dumbest? Maybe not the worst. A mechanic in my chemical plant wrapped expensive copper tubing around his chest and put his coat over it. It was a really cold day, and it started drawing up to where he couldn't breathe just as he got to the guard gate. The guards had a good laugh unwinding the soon-to-be unemployed mechanic. I was a media director, and one of the guys on my team got drunk as fuck off Hennessy that we kept in a VIP area for clients. We had to shoot a commercial that day, and the dude couldn't even hold his camera correctly. He stole Hennessy that is for clients only, and couldn't help film the commercial. The next day I fired him. Married plant manager had an affair with an assembly worker who was his granddaughter's age and a mum to 2 very young boys. The girl dated one of the techs who was 12 years older than her and worked at the same plant. The tech found out about the affair and killed her. The company fired the plant manager. Guy was just hired. He asked to go home on his second day because he shit his pants. Alright, shit happens. A little teamy. But what can you do? He must be an honest soul. Went home for the afternoon. Came in on the 3rd day, shit his pants again, and asked to go home. There was no 4th day. Blew up $45,000 worth of equipment through shoddy electrical work he had been already trained for. To be fair, this one's also on us management. We probably shouldn't have let him have a go at even this simple electrical work, considering how unreliable he had shown himself to be thus far. We had an HR woman and a male executive at our company both get fired. They were accidentally walked in on in their executive's office. They were found to be both partaking in lines of cocaine, and a woman was busy playing the man's skin flute. Both were terminated. Not a manager, at a carpenter with several employees. I had a worker doing a window replacement at a person's home. The room he was working in had a fully stocked bar. Employee drank a 400 bottle of liquor and homeowner found him passed out in their guest room. Some years back, walked in on one of my employees doing cocaine in a stairwell. Yeah, you do whatever the fuck you want at home, but if you're doing that shit at work, you obviously have a serious problem. And I don't really want you on my team. Someone took a crap in our company sink one night, but nobody ever figured out who it was. It was beyond nasty. Was your typical white-collar office break room. People coming in the next morning to get their coffee still have PTSD. Ran a side hustle producing adult calendars. Discovered it because our sysadmins noticed he was using an anomalously large fraction of our network bandwidth. He was downloading a ton of porn to harvest the images. I don't remember the circumstances, but an employee slapped our general manager and walked out. No, the police weren't called, probably because the GM was doing a lot of shady shit, and that's probably why he got slapped. Not really a manager, but a small business owner, wedding photographer. Showed up an hour and a half late smelling of whiskey and weed. Got him to photograph a bit past the ceremony, then told him to peace. So far just one person told me she wouldn't be at work for her scheduled shift because she had orientation for a new part-time job that day. I told her to be at work as scheduled or don't come back. Supposed to drive a car from one city to another on a Friday, probably to our trip. Took it to Mexico and partied for a weekend and delivered the car on Monday. This was not even a border state. He was perpetually late, uncommunicative, and constantly on his phone. Then he threw an exceedingly loud and public temper tantrum that I got promoted instead of him despite his seniority. One time an employee at my company, Beak Company, did a reply all to a company-wide email complaining about the timing of employee-provided lunch. He was gone within a couple weeks. I'm not a manager, but an employee of an airport cargo handling company. We had a guy crash a brand new jet engine air start unit into a jet engine. Bosses were not happy. Had a guy who was late one day, who then called and tried to get co-workers to bail him out of jail on the drunk driving charges he got on the way to work that morning. We had a guy who non-consensually licked a co-worker at a work event. Not the worst thing I've ever heard, but definitely the most amusing to recount that I've heard. Manager of a store mid-30s stole around $1,000 of our store bank and used it to pay for his trip to meet up with his 14-year-old girlfriend multiple states away. Someone got fired because he went in the bathroom on his break and huffed the bottle of canned air and passed out. He was a good employee too. What a waste. He asked a coworker in the parking lot if he could pay him to complete his assigned work. He faked it through the interview process and was a terrible hire. This was told to me when I first started my job, but someone drove off in a piece of industrial farm equipment. For reference, these are worth like $80,000.